Hello, RP people. Just giving you guys a quick heads up. We had a little bit of technical difficulties throughout this, so you might notice a little bit of robot-y talk every once in a while, and we even had some delays when we're recording. Um, so you might notice that we sometimes stop, kind of get refixed. I tried to fix up as best I can, but I can only do so much. Also, thank you so much, John. Um, I'm going to take a lot of your things into advisement. This message is for you. Uh, and also, if you wait till the end of the episode, you'll have a promo for Tale of the Manticore. Highly recommend checking out. It's fantastic. Hello, RP people, and welcome back to another episode of Role Playing as Smart People, the podcast where we pretend to know what we're talking about when it comes to all things tabletop. My name is Santa, and I'm glad you can tune in again. As always, we have Scott W., and here joining us today, we have a special guest. Say hello to John from the podcast Tales of the Manticore. Hello, John.
Hello, John.
Hey, Santa. Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure.
Nailed it.
This is the first.
All right, I'm done.
Yeah, nailed it. This is first time, always done. No screw ups with this recording.
Absolutely no shenanigans.
It's going to be very confusing for a listener.
That's all right.
They're used to it.
Taping cardboard, so it's
fine. So John, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Okay. I'm a high school teacher that was a huge RPG nerd back in the 80s. Like Stranger Things is basically, a biopic for me. Well, minus the actual supernatural stuff and ESP. But big old gaming nerd when I was a kid, and gave it up for years and decades, actually. And so I came back to the hobby about 2 years ago. But because of the pandemic and stuff, I couldn't get an actual game table together. And because I have pretty poor Wi-Fi, which we've experienced already, I couldn't really, online wasn't a good option for me. And so I discovered solo gaming and I discovered podcasts, and eventually I decided to make a solo gaming podcast. And that was 2 years ago. And ever since then, it's just sort of been growing and growing and getting better and better. And my interest in the hobby is actually just redoubled and redoubled and redoubled. It's not going anywhere. It's amazing. It's the best game in the world.
No, I would agree with you. And I
said
this
a
little bit before.
Are you there? Okay.
No, we're here. No worries. No screw ups yet.
I stunned you because it was from the heart.
It was very heartwarming. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I was saying this before,
wipe that
but
tear away, and let's get on with it now.
But yeah, John, you have one of the few podcasts that I can actually listen to on a regular basis that's like an actual play. I'm just super excited to have you on here, just because, again, I only started listening to you recently, but I'm starting to try and eat through the episodes whenever I drive to work and back.
Right on. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get a lot from listeners that it's the actual play for people that don't like actual plays. I hear that a lot, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is in many ways like the anti thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's different from what's out there in a lot of ways. To be honest with you, if I was sort of in your typical actual play podcast, I really don't know how I would deal with the level of competition that's out there, because it is fierce. I mean, if you're doing just like a D&D 5e podcast, actual play, and you're going to, zany hijinks and shenanigans and, table humor, boy, you've got some competition, because there are like hundreds upon hundreds that are basically doing that, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, and it's so true, because like every single I've tried to like reach out on Twitter and try and find other podcasts that do something kind of similar to.
There we go.
No,
can you hear me?
You're in and out. Robot.
If
voice.
you look up, can you hear us?
I heard it.
I can hear you.
I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
You're back. You're back.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry, whatever you said 10 seconds ago, could you try that again?
I was going to say is like I've tried to like finding like other podcasts that kind of do what we do, because like we started too kind of like on a spur of the moment, just like, hey, let's try this out. I literally messaged them with a name saying, wouldn't this be a good name for a podcast? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's hilarious, let's do it. Yeah. And I've on Twitter and all that, I've tried to look through for other people who do something that's more just the conversation piece about RPGs, and all I found is D&D podcasts. Every single one of them is D&D podcasts, and I don't know how there's so much of a market that a lot of these people, they're like, we just got that 1,000 subscribers. I'm like, I heard that from like 3 others like 2 days ago. Is there really that much of a market for 5e content for
Yeah,
podcasts?
it's the best selling game right now, of course.
Yeah, although, even like if you're on Twitter and you get like 1,000 subscribers, that does not necessarily mean people are
No.
listening to your show.
Yeah.
Well, I know from experience, because when I started out, I think I got to 1,000 followers on Twitter pretty quickly, but the numbers when I started the podcast were not good. I mean, I think everybody that makes a
Yeah.
podcast, everybody starts with one, and then you kind of cross your
Yeah.
fingers and hope that tomorrow you'll have two, right? And then eventually, over time,
Yeah.
it grows into well, hopefully, over time, it grows into a falling. But at the beginning, it's it's tough unless you've got like some kind of celebrity, jet thrusters under you that you can somehow launch with some kind of publicity. But for those of us that are just sort of throwing something into space, like that was my story anyway. I just made it and put it out there. um, you start off with like one listener, and it's you, and then the next day you got two listeners, maybe, hopefully. And then eventually, word of mouth kicks in, and stuff hopefully happens, and people start listening. But everybody starts off there, right? So even though there's a
Yeah.
like a insane number of actual play podcasts out there, I'm not sure that they're being listened to. I mean, maybe they
Oh
are.
no.
Maybe they are.
Yeah, I mean, by some, right? But yeah, nothing in
Sure.
the terms that Critical Role is.
Oh
I
God,
think
no.
what happens is, like, 1% of them become extremely popular, like your Critical Role or your Dungeons and Daddies or your the Adventure Zone, and then the other 99% sort of linger in obscurity. Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And there's some good ones that they just fade away, and it's too bad, but it just is what it is, either real life or
Yeah,
sort of you
that
lose
is
that
an
motivation.
absolute shame. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right. I think you have to have some like endurance, right? If you're going to put out a
Oh,
podcast, you
yeah.
better have some thick skin and some endurance, because the first few months, it's not the most uplifting thing to like check your numbers and be like, 7 people downloaded your show today, and you're like, oh,
Oh God,
well,
we're
minus
still
the two
kind of
times
in
I
that.
logged in.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still kind of in that phase. Like we've been around for almost 6 months now,
Oh yeah.
and like we do
Mhm.
have some followers,
You
but
guys
it's
are
not
new.
as
Six
like
months.
it's.
6 months is very young. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
and I even then like I always like to look at it from our, like I showed a graph the other day to Scott and Finder, and it was just like our 1 month to our now, and even then, like it's a considerable increase. It's still nothing like, oh my God, we're going to be millionaires, but I
No.
don't even care because I love doing this, and I could not make any money off
Yeah.
this ever, and just completely just always dish out money for it, and I think I'd still do it.
Yes. And that's the
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
right?
Because
I
this.
think if you're doing something like this, which is pretty labor intensive, you better enjoy the work. Otherwise, you'd be miserable.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
editing is not always fun and can be extremely
Mm.
frustrating, especially when you get those crazy spikes in volume where you're just like, okay, my ears bleed a little bit with my headphones on right now, but I'll tone that down. And you listen to that same tone
Or if you get
over and
like an
over again.
incompetent guest that can't say a single syllable word, like show, I don't know, for example.
Well, I usually just leave my mistakes in, so I don't have to deal with that part.
Yeah. Absolutely.
um, so Well, shall we hop onto the topic?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's talk all things grim and dark.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the topic for today. We are discussing the the grimdark setting question mark because
Maybe.
and John, we're gonna have to have your opinion on this because we were talking about this
Well,
and
we brought him on, so I'm hoping we can get his opinion.
no, yeah, you're muted for now. You can't do that. So I was
I'll
mentioning
be the
how
eye
I
candy for the podcast.
There you go.
yeah, we'll just put up the picture of the Manticore right at the front of the podcast.
Like I've got a big thumbs up right now. Big old smile and a big old thumbs up.
So I was saying how I don't believe that grimdark is a genre or a setting, but it's more of a style of play. And
There you go.
because
Yes.
you can almost add grimdark to everything. But Scott, what's
Mhm.
your opinion on this? Because you stopped yourself before
Yeah,
continuing on.
because Grimdark is definitely a genre. The 1990s called, and they want their genre back because it's when it got started. It started in comics,
Fair
and
enough.
I'm
Fair.
surprised for you, right? Yeah, The Watchmen, Spawn. Kind of everyone got tired of the really zany superheroes, and they wanted this
Yeah, Frank
Grimdark.
Miller
And
stuff, right?
right, yeah. And then for Santa, I'm really shocked at you because pop quiz for Santa live on the air. Do you know who really capstoned the term grimdark and brought
Ooh.
it into the zeitgeist?
No, I do not actually.
Fucking Warhammer 40,000. That's who.
I was I thought you
That
were
makes
looking for
sense.
a person. Yeah.
No,
Well,
no, it's them. Yeah,
and it's actually funny because
yeah,
40K started off as a parody and then went to the
yeah,
grimdark.
sure. Yeah, and that's the thing, right?
Mhm.
And so they kind of realized what was happening. But yeah, that's where I think it's a. I mean, yeah, it's obviously a setting. You know, it's grimdark settings because normal D&D is very vanilla, Mary Poppins, and then
Hmm.
there's the grimdark stuff, which is kind of what John and I are probably used to from old school D&D because our D&D was
Yeah.
never presented as Mary Poppins. But yeah, it's definitely a
Right.
genre.
Actually, if you look at like I forget, I think it was uh Professor Dungeon Master who was talking about this. I don't know if you know him from YouTube. He's great, by the way. Check out Professor Dungeon Master. Anyway, he was talking about how like if you look at old school artwork versus we'll just call it new school artwork,
Mhm.
the heroes are presented as like in danger and victims and being terrorized. And
Yeah.
in new school artwork, it's always kind of like in that sort of like body twisted, butt out, boobs out
Yeah.
action hero pose. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? With like
Yeah.
some ray
100%.
blasting out of their hand. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's so different. It's so
No,
different.
that's-
Yeah.
so then you still think it's a genre, even though
I,
you can
I do
really
think it's a genre.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do think it's a genre
I don't know.
because you have to make a choice to make grim dark. It's a theme, if that helps, right?
Yeah, because
Because
like
I mean,
you can make anything grimdark if you add enough turmoil into it.
right. So that's the point, though. You can make anything science fiction if you twist the weird science enough, right? But
It's
I
true.
understand where you're coming from. It's not a hardened genre, but yeah, you
Yeah.
can use it's you can it's well within the taxonomy of like fiction at this point.
Yeah. What, John? Who do you agree with? Who's right here?
This is going to sound like such a lame answer, but I think maybe you guys have kind of covered both halves of the thing because
Yeah.
I can imagine the a grim dark. I couldn't have a grim dark setting in which the characters are sort of overpowered and not in danger, which is the game style that Santa's talking about. That wouldn't work,
Hmm.
it wouldn't. I mean, you could do it; it wouldn't be very effective. Like if you're going to play
Yeah.
a game of Call of Cthulhu, you got to be extremely fragile and
Yeah.
mortal and in constant
Yeah.
danger and probably going to die. That's like that game. It's got to run that way, otherwise it wouldn't be fun. Actually, on the other hand, if you have the kind of like zeros just struggling to survive and you put them in a different kind of window dressing like you know sort of that manga-esque anime-esque style that's kind of popular these days. I'm not sure that that
Mhm.
Yeah.
would work either. I think you kind of have to have both. I don't want to cop out the answer and say you're both
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right, but
No,
kind of you're both right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we'll both be right. I mean, if you look at like if when you do searches of like how to run Grimdark 5e, it's almost always here's all the homebrews rules you'll need.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it is about
You
how
know.
to depower the characters, right? Rather than,
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
part of it in terms of like tone and mood
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like that's part of it, but a lot of it just is how do we take away the unkillable quality of the kind of the modern D&D character.
Yeah.
I don't know
That
if you
threat
guys
has
play
to be
much
real.
5e, but that with all of the short rests and the long rests and the death saves, it's really hard to die, and but by design.
Yeah.
It
Like I think that
definitely
they made
is.
a game where it's hard to die because they were cooking some stuff up in their lab and they discovered that people don't like it when their characters die, so they said, okay, well, let's make our game so that the characters don't die.
Yeah.
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 No, that's definitely true. But yeah, I I'm just like my one thing why I don't like. I think it is a theme, not a setting or anything like that. Because you can't have grim dark on its own. You know, you can't just have the grim dark
I
genre.
see what you're saying.
It has to be attached to
Yeah.
fantasy,
Hmm.
sci-fi.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
fair enough.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fair
Yeah.
enough. Easy
So,
enough.
and here's another part to the question because I think everyone can agree that the grimdark setting itself it's pretty damn cool, especially when you're reading it. Uh, but I think most people kind of drop off of grimdark the moment that they have to actually try and play it.
Well,
And
it's
It really
tough.
depends, I think, on the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I think what it comes down to is like, do you want a game in which you are sort of like exploring your character, in which case you probably wouldn't like Grimdark as much,
Yeah.
or do you want a
mm-mm.
game in which you're exploring a world and a story? Because if you can be okay with your character's death being part of the fabric of a story, then you can really buy into it. It doesn't mean it doesn't sting when your character dies, but I think that's the big difference there for me is, people, if you spend 2 hours rolling up a character, yeah, you don't want that character to die in the first 10 minutes. But if you can sort of like be okay with the character maybe dying, but that enriches the story, then I think that's part of that grimdark attitude.
Yeah, and even like right now, you think of like the most popular grim dark kind of setting for RPGs, because if it wasn't RPGs, it would obviously be 40K. But
Yeah.
for RPGs, it would have to be Morkborg, and that is one that focuses almost completely away from the characters. It doesn't even care if you give your character a name. Like,
Right. It says something in the instructions about name your character if you think they're going to live long enough for it to matter. Right. I'm
yeah,
paraphrasing, but it's something like that. Yes. See, I thought you were going to say Curse of Strahd, and I thought, yes. And every single actual play I've heard with Curse of Strahd, every time it's a cartoon. Every time.
Yes.
I'd love to
Yep.
hear it. I'd love to hear somebody actually tackle that in a Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, quote
ooh,
unquote
Yeah.
serious way. I've never found that though. I don't think it exists. Somebody
Well,
should
fuck.
make that.
Challenge accepted, John.
Do it.
I
Do
definitely
it.
could. I definitely could run that because, well, part of the thing you see too is like Curse of Strahd, especially specifically. So we tend to shit a little bit on 5e, but it's just because of how it's designed. Like the game
Yep.
mechanics are solid, but it's really the implementation.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
Curse of
yeah.
Strahd, you're not wrong, right? So here's Curse of Strahd. Here's my cast of characters: human paladin, a fucking turtle man cleric, a fucking wolf man fighter.
Yeah.
Stop. We're already done.
Yeah.
We're not playing Curse of Strahd with
Yeah.
these fucking
Right. Right. Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
So
It's already over.
but I
yeah.
want my turtle.
No,
Right.
in fact, if I were to do Curse of Strahd, I think it would be a humans only campaign. To be honest,
There
just
you
to
go.
really
Now
cement
you're
it, and then
talking.
yeah, because you could put the demi humans in Barovia, but that really adds that
Yeah.
creepiness factor to them. So yeah,
Would
Absolutely.
you
Like
actually?
if you want to make your monsters and your undead like exciting, then
Yeah.
make the characters be human or mostly human, or make
Yeah.
non-human characters rare,
Yep.
because when everything is special, then nothing is special, including your monsters. So if your characters are bored, look at your party makeup, and if it's a turtle and a dragonborn and a this and a that, well, maybe that's why. It's
Yeah.
because you've already got like everything is already ultra magic, so of course nobody's interested in your in your setting, because they've already got like this dog's breakfast of a party makeup. So I did say that I'm going to start to rant if you let me. Do not let me. All right, I'm grounding myself now. I'm grounded.
No, no, don't ground yourself because you're not wrong, right? Because the first moments are always like my tiefling warlock stands up and gets fucking murdered by the entire village.
Say that again. I think I lost you.
It's just people playing ridiculous things like tiefling warlocks and going to Barovia. Stop. You're dead. You're dead as soon as you hit the tavern.
Yeah, for a long, long time, I was bothered by the kind of Gonzo D&D style, and I had the kind of like, why is this so popular? Like, I don't even understand it. These are adults playing, essentially like My Little Pony, but every now and then somebody gets hit in the head with a mace
Yes.
and there's brain matter everywhere. It's bizarre. Why do people want to do this?
Oh my
And
god. It's
I
like
think I
Happy Tree
posted a couple of
Friends.
things online, and very quickly people jumped on me and they were like, don't tell anyone how to play, and there's no right way. And you know what?
Oh, okay.
Fair enough. There is no right way. There's no wrong way. More for me, it's
Right.
I'm just I'm just over here scratching my head, going like, why is this
Yeah.
why is this popular? It it'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
do you guys want to watch a fantasy movie tonight? Yeah, great. Okay, what do you want to watch? Conan? Well, I've got the gummy bears. How do you feel about that? And
Right.
then you have everybody in the room saying, yes, that's what I want to watch, the gummy bears. And you're holding your Conan going, but I thought, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Technically, it's both fantasy, but
Well, true. It's like if you were going to compare, like for someone to watch, so you're not wrong. It's like Dark Crystal and Conan,
Right.
two
Yep.
vastly different fantasy experiences, and only one of them would I really want to play in, and that would be the world of Conan.
Yes. And you
It's
know what?
just
Let me go one further on this, because I was literally thinking about Dark Crystal today. And I thought, even though that's like a fantasy for children, they
Mhm.
the Dark Crystal at least takes itself kind of seriously. Whereas
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I find that really the thing is now, with especially with like common actual plays, it's really people shitting on the game because they're not living in like a fantasy world that is maybe fairy tale-ish, or kind of like dark fairy tale-ish, like the Dark Crystal, but it's a spoof. And what, like, the message that I get is like, don't think I'm a nerd because I'm playing D&D. Watch me shit all
Yes.
over this game, right? As I crack jokes, that's really
Yeah.
separating me from what's going on. And so that's my take. And maybe I think it's because I'm old. I think it's because I sort of like grew up in the 80s, and so
Yeah.
for me, like, fantasy
I
is Conan and not Harry Potter.
Yes.
I think you like you might have actually hit something on the head there. Um, and the thing with 5e, it's blown up. The people who've joined the scene now who are playing 5e, uh, and I mean 5e exclusively, because you can tell the people who aren't, because they tend to be the only people who question anything with 5e. But I think that's kind of on the head, where it's like they're almost like saying they're almost making a joke out of the setting in almost like a hipster, oh, this is an ironic way. Like everyone's loving it, everyone's enjoying it, but they're not taking the source material seriously. And that could almost be like its own little jab at the old school RPG in its own. But I might just be talking on my
Yeah,
ass
I
right
think
here.
it is. No, I don't know. Did you ever run a game where you invited somebody that didn't play very much and they didn't really know the rules that much, but they join in, and then so you make your characters, and let's say you're kind of playing a semi-serious game of D&D or whatever. It's not fully beer and pretzels. And
Yeah.
then the one person, they're like, okay, yes, I have my character's name, and oh, I get this. I'm gonna call them Farty McFlex. And my character's name is
Yeah,
Farty McFlex. And then you can just kind of see everybody at the table kind of wilt because now that person
yeah.
has kind of ruined their little immersion experience a little bit. But all they're really doing is just trying to like socialize and be entertaining and have fun. But their fun is a different kind of way. There's like you can invest in the story in that, but then you got to have like that
Hmm.
buy-in of seriousness. Or you can just like shit on everything, and that's the Farty McFlex thing. And I guess you could say that both work, but maybe they don't work really great together. I don't know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you can't even play like because Scott would attest to this. I tend to be a little bit of a gonzo player,
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
but I I don't try and make crazy characters that are out of line or anything like that. I like to create characters that are kind of their own unique little person, and then play with the story itself because I've I've always played more of the outsider characters, the characters that don't necessarily fit in to the whole frame of how the normal society works. While and I like to almost role play their their difficulty of trying to figure out the how the society works in their own kind of unique, clever way. But like
Hmm.
I, for me, I know I tend to go more to the comedic, but I always wish and I wished and I loved it. Even when I said, "Oh, let's do this episode, John," you're like, "Yeah, you should come on too," and I was like, "Oh God, you're very serious.
Yeah.
I'm not." But
That's okay.
uh,
Actually, we're us serious gamers are actually in the very small minority, which
Absolutely.
I've kind of
Yeah.
had to like learn to like, keep my mouth shut most of the time because I'm always like a very, 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 very small percentage of people that feel like D&D is better when it's not a joke. Like I get that.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm like 1 in 100 people that feel that that's true. So I get that I'm the weirdo in the room. Well, in this case,
I
maybe if Scott feels that way, you're the weirdo in the room. But usually, it's just me.
Santa's the weird in the room. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point too, and it might be just closing in on 50, where it's just like, if I were to run a game in a game store or something, and people are like, "Okay, here's my tiefling," blah blah blah, I'm like, that shit's stupid as fuck. You are not playing
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
You
I'd
know,
feel the
I
same
need you.
way. And yet,
Yeah,
okay, so I think it is an age thing, isn't it, Scott? Because you and I are the
it's a
same
Gen X
vintage.
thing. Yeah,
And
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think it is because you know what, it's I agree with you guys 100%, and it kind of puts my own kind of play style into question because like I I really like playing those kind of characters. I don't try and make them always ridiculous. If it goes ridiculous, it is. But like even when we're playing that goblin, I tried in my own. He was still a very dark character. Like I would
yeah,
just
no, he fit in
consume the
Eberron.
yeah, consume the
Yeah,
flesh. I remember when we went to the
yeah, yeah,
bottom layers.
yeah.
There was a bunch of kids who were like goblin children because the way how it works, it's like a giant was a tower, and there's different levels.
Yeah,
Uh,
Sharn.
and we are at one of the lower levels where a lot of the goblins were, and a bunch of goblin children were literally trying to like swarm us. And I knew what they were trying to do was steal it, so I just grabbed a wooden uh, like a piece of wood that fell off of a building, had a nail in it. And I just started swinging at the kids because I was like, this is exactly, they don't give a shit about the other kids. They just know that at this point of life, you hit them so that they don't take your stuff. And if they get hurt, that's their problem. And I thought that was, I know that sounds harsh and brutal, but I was thinking, it was like, this was probably what would have happened in that level of
Uh-huh.
thing. So I agree that I think serious games are the better games. I just personally I have trouble trying to stay into that mind frame itself.
Yeah. At the end of
Yeah.
the
You
day, you can't say this is better, this is worse. All you can really do is say this is
right?
what I like, and it just comes down to taste, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because otherwise, you would just argue in circles forever, and people say my way, no my
yeah,
way, my way, no my way.
yep,
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah,
you could ask why would people ever want to play a game which is essentially like a horror movie? And that's a good question. Wait, you want to feel fear? You want to feel in danger all the time? You want terror? You want sadness and
yeah.
pathos
Mhm.
and all that? And so for me, it's like absolutely yes. But I don't. But it is. I have to admit, like that is weird to prefer that over the gummy bears experience. Maybe.
Well, too, you and I didn't come from the participation trophy generation. We were Gen Xers, and it was here's your key to the house, get the fuck out of the house, come back by sunset, or whenever, and then enjoy life, right? And
Wow, you
oh,
just
you fell
described
down.
my
Well, that's
entire
too bad.
adolescence.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's how I grew up. It was like, oh, you
Yeah.
fell down. Oh, you lost. Well, that's too bad. Why do you think you lost? Well, because you didn't try your hardest. That's why you lost. Instead of like, well, you got fourth place, and that's really just that's the third first place. I'm like, no, no, it's not.
Right.
But there's a movie, and John, I don't know if you've seen this movie, and every time we have a conversation like this, I try to get everyone to watch it. Who
Uh-huh.
listens? It's Zero Charisma. It covers this topic. Well, our subtopic. It covers it precisely. It's about a gaming group. They're very serious. The Dungeon Master is over the top serious. He's one of those old school serious, and that's it. Kind of picks on him, but it also brings in a character named Miles because, of course, there's a hipster fucking named Miles who comes to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's really just what you described. Is it's sort of like I play D&D out of irony, and I think
Yeah.
Stranger
Yep.
Things
Yep. Yep.
really precipitated this. I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons out of irony,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it's like, oh, you.
I've got to see this. I feel like this is the movie of my life.
I think it's on a Prime for free, maybe, but I mean, it's well worth the price of entry to check it out. It's a little cringy,
Cool.
but I think it's also a little. I think it's cringier for the millennial crowd because they're
Yeah.
concentrated on Scott, who's the GM, because he is definitely, he's the kind of person you and I are used to in the old circles of gaming.
Right.
Um, but for folks like
There's no
us,
there's no D&D movies that aren't at least a little cringy.
right,
Like
yeah.
it's
And this
just
is just, it's like a documentary, but not really a documentary. I guess that's not really fair. It's a
yeah.
movie, but yeah, the folks who made it, I contacted them a little while back because I was trying to get them to see if they want to come on the show or something. Because I'm like, you basically are
Oh damn.
prophets, so your prophecies all
Damn. Well, let me
all
recommend
came
one.
true.
We're sort of veering off topic here, but
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's the whole story of our show. Don't worry.
perfect. I'm gonna fit
Oh,
right in here with you
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Go and find Psycho Gorman. It's like a
I've
Yes.
seen
splatter
it. I've
horror.
seen it.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a love letter to yeah, it's a love letter to OSR D&D, and it's wonderful.
100%. I've actually watched it. I loved it. Even because like me and the wifey we do 30 days of horror when it comes to Halloween, right?
Oh, awesome! I love that.
She's like, this sounds so stupid, and I was like, it's on the list though. She's like, and we do have to watch a horror movie a day. Fine, and she watched it. She's like, that was a lot better than I thought it would be. I was like, I know, right? Me too. I didn't
Yeah.
expect anything from it.
Who doesn't love Rich Evan?
Oh, I know there's some new horror out that's actually done almost entirely with puppets on what's that one streaming channel? Also
Shudder. I
attached
think I
to
saw something like that.
yeah. And I was
Interesting.
looking at it, I was like that it actually looks pretty good, and apparently it's like 30 years in the making or
It
some shit
does.
like that by yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
So, John, you spiked on this, and it is a curious topic because I'm sure there are people who are like these jerk offs. But what is so attractive about grimdark fantasy?
Sometimes
Ooh.
I ask myself that a lot because I spend so much time in that kind of world. Like my show is, it's not fully grimdark. It's not Merkborg grimdark. It's kind of a mix of what I would call classic fantasy, like Errol Otis painting fantasy. For me, that's classic, and
Yeah, yeah,
horror elements. And so,
yeah.
what's appealing about it? I don't. I'm not sure. I know. I'm one of these guys. I'm a huge horror movie buff, um, and sometimes I'll ask like, what is it? Like, what kind of person would enjoy a horror movie? Like, why? It makes much more sense to not. So, is it just sort of like that simulation of danger that's exciting, or I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I can tell you kind of how I arrived there with my show. There's a couple of things that got me there, not very deliberately, because my old D&D games weren't especially grimdark. They were more along the classic fantasy lines, and I wasn't playing for story. I was playing to kill monsters and get loot and stuff like that when I was a kid. But the way I kind of arrived at this grimdark thing was that um, my mission statement was kind of like take the story seriously, and so that alone actually brought me to grimdark. Because if you've got a story where you've got you sort of violence every few episodes, and it's because it's the audio medium, you're going to have like certain sound effects. You're going to have screaming and crying and pain and
Yeah.
sounds of stabbing. It all just sort of led itself into quasi horror really, really quickly. Or if you take like I have a certain scene without spoiling anything where somebody is being an evil cleric is sacrificing a good priestess to kind of cast a spell. And to describe that scene, you could kind of do the old 80s porno thing where the camera, goes and focuses on a lampshade while the action's going on, or you could show it,
Yeah.
but in like I show it in so to speak in the podcast.
Sure.
And you can hear the knife going through flesh, and so you couldn't do that without it being semi horror. Like Game of Thrones, I think the same thing happened. Like there's an element of horror in Game of Thrones. How could you not? You've got like somebody who flays people in it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
absolutely horrific. That's not fantasy, that's horror. Anyway, so that's one reason. The other reason is because it is an audio medium, I wanted the rules to be simple, so I went with basic. And basic is just more deadly.
Yeah.
The end, right? Just
Mhm.
you've got four
Yeah.
hit points. That's basic.
Yeah.
But I went with basic just so that I wouldn't have to be explaining rules all the time because audio medium. I just wanted to get to the point and not be bogged down with rules. So I picked basic. Also because I knew basic backwards and forwards. Because again, I'm an old man.
Yeah, it's a it's kind of funny that you mentioned like basic and all that because I know Scott, you kind of went towards your first RPG that you designed because you thought that magic wasn't deadly enough, right?
Well, so when I
Hmm.
designed the Oubliette Sorcery and Reavers, I just thought that
I love
magic
that name, by the
didn't.
way. That's a
Thanks.
badass name.
Everyone was like, "Wait a minute,
And
did you do that on
oubliettes,
purpose?"
by the
You're
way, are
absolutely.
absolutely horror. I mean, oh my god, does
You're
it get more horror
exactly.
than oubliette?
Yeah, we're just gonna throw you in the forgotten room.
I
But
thought about
I
putting
just
one of those in my show, and I thought it's too far.
I mean, no, it's. I think it could be an
I might do
interesting
it.
set piece. Yeah, I didn't think Magic felt special, and in any
Hmm.
edition of any game I've ever played, and
Right.
it
True.
always
True.
came down to like, oh, I just cast the spells. Okay, cool story. Then what? Shadowrun came closest to there was a gamble of casting spells, but it was still
Uh
I
huh.
cast a spell, now I resist the spell. So when I wrote OSNR, it was like, no, I'm starting from the point that I want being a mage to feel fucking awesome, and
Yeah.
that and every game I write is there's always choices to be made. There's a give and take no matter what you do. It's not, and
Hmm.
very few things will always be very simple in the games. And so I wanted that. I wanted the mage player to say, I can do a lot of shit for this group or even on my own, but there are a lot of risks and I might need some of your help, my willing friends, or I might have to, find someone that we're going to have to get help from to do some of this. And it really gives you a chance. Then I divided magic into, three spheres of law, right? Law, basically good, bad, and neutral or fairy.
Uh huh.
And depending on the spells, bad spells are easier to cast than good spells, but bad spells do terrible shit to you as a caster if you fuck them up, and things
Very
like
cool.
that. And so, yeah, and that's how I really went for it. And yeah, I think the feedback was really awesome. The first feedback was, uh, whoever made this game hates wizards. I was like, I don't hate wizards. I just want you to understand you're not just going to sit at the table and tell me I cast magic missile. I need you to
Right.
really
Not a
think.
not a button mash. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, well, it's not fair. I'm like, so it's fair for the fucking fighter character to do nothing but get their ass handed to them. Well, that's the point of their role. The point of your role is to be awesome and be magical and make spell components count and make talismans count and foci count. Everything about your character should count. That's just like a fighter's armor, shield, and weapons count. And once we got into that, I started demoing it at cons and stuff. You can see light bulbs come on, and they're just like, holy shit. So,
Oh, wow. That's a cool experience that I wish I could do. Being, you'd think that in Toronto we'd have that opportunity, but well, I guess I got back into RPGs in the pandemic, but I've never
oh
been to a
yeah, rough
con
time.
my in my whole life. Not
Oh man,
that's kind of on my bucket list now. I wanted to get back to a live table. I wanted to get to a live table. I wanted to give 5e a real shot with a real live table of people, and because I didn't want to pass judgment on it from having to listen to a few APs, and I wanted to go to a con, and I've managed two of those things now. I'm back at a couple
nice.
live tables. I'm playing a 5e game right now, and I've still never been to a con.
Oh, hopefully there'll be a chance. I used to avoid cons because I thought it was like, like I'm one of those old school gamers who is like, the table is enough. LARPing, you're fucking nerds. And then it's like cons were just below that. I'm like,
Nerds.
yeah. Then I don't LARP. I still have not
Wait,
LARPed, and that
cons are below LARPing?
I thought so.
Wait,
Yeah,
are
I
are
thought
cons
LARPing was
below
the.
LARPing on the who beats up who chain?
Yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah,
thought
because I'm
LARPing was
like
the rock
cons.
bottom.
I kind
I thought
no,
LARPing
no,
was the
no.
rock
Because
bottom.
we got to put at the pinnacle of the who is at the peak of super nerd, and so that's where I kind of climbed the mountain of nerdiness. But yeah, but the cons are kind of cool. I haven't ever played in a successful game that I've really found fun. But it's because my
Uh-huh.
style as a GM is probably so radically different than most people that I just get bored easy from people because it's a lot of the same rote shit that you see in actual plays. I'm like, oh, you're gonna try this at this table? Okay, cool story. But yeah, no, you gotta try it if you can get a chance to
Right.
go to a con.
Right.
They're a lot of fun. They're definitely different.
Don't worry, I'm with you on that. I haven't never been to
There's
a
one
con
going on
either.
in Toronto
And then
in late July, and I think I'm going to go. But it does sort of feel like
yeah,
paying $30 to go stand in a lineup, and then maybe in another lineup, and then go shopping, and then another lineup. But I'm going to do it anyway, just because I've never been to one.
nah. They should have a schedule for you so you can register for games and all that jazz, or even run something. Because that's normally what I do is I'll run 4 games so I can pay for my entry, and then I'll usually demo whatever I'm working on for the year to get feedback. If it's unless it's a product that's already out, and it's like, thank you for your feedback, noted.
That sounds cool.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
A little bit back on topic. I was kind of
yeah. Sorry.
I was trying. No. I brought it up. So I was kind of thinking about why people like Grimdark, and I think it's almost kind of in our DNA. Because if like we like to think of ourselves as like, oh, we're all these civilized, these good people, but it's like one of the more popular fights is UFC, which is literally just people fighting and beating the shit out of each other.
Right.
We used to have these like we used to have blood sports. We used to have public executions where people would come
Gladiatorial
just to
yeah,
watch a hit,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
gladiators, and
yeah.
and I think there's almost something like in all. I think it's almost something like it's a taboo that is more accepted, so people can be like, oh well, I really like the grimdark stuff, and they're like, oh, I can't do that, that's too dark for me, it's too scary. But nobody ever questions why people like it, and I think that's because all in all, I think most people like the darkness, like the evil, and it's just something that's taboo and almost kind of just attractive in a way. I don't. I
Absolutely. And I mean, even if you get out of like forget Grimdark for a minute, just think of like even a cartoony game of D&D. Most of those games are still going to have violence in them, which
Mhm.
is what the same thing that we're talking about, right? It is that sort of the dark side, that the appeal of the dark side, because even if you've got turtles and tieflings running around, I'm going to guarantee you that at some point they're killing each other, right? Or
Oh
killing
yeah.
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
or being killed by, probably not being killed by something. But I mean, it's one of the pillars of the game. If you take it away, it's God. I don't want to say it's not D&D because somebody's going to jump on me and I'm going to get lots of mail. But
Don't worry, we'll get lots of mail.
if you take away combat from D&D, I don't know. For me, I'm probably like, thanks for your time. I don't think I'll be coming back next week, because that's really part of the appeal for me. And clearly it is for a lot of people. It
Mhm.
really is baked right into the game. Like a lot of the mechanics are devoted to that. It's not
Yep.
just a, oh, and sometimes there's fighting. It's like, no, this is a game about violent conflict.
Fighting.
And you can dress it up
Yeah.
with a
Mhm.
turtle, or you can go full grimdark, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. That's why I always ask people, because they're trying to say that D&D is this or that, and it's just like, oh, it's not this, it's not that mechanically heavy. Like, look, I need you to count all the spells that have a combat effect and all the skills that have a combat effect, and come back to me and let me know what that number is, because I'm
Right.
going to
A
tell you
lot
it's
of them are about
gigantic.
hurting people. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
So it's just crazy. But yeah, and part of it's Santa. Part of it is the risk reward that human beings need. We need to be
Mhm.
challenged. We need to feel vulnerable because we
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to overcome those vulnerabilities. And like original D&D, you actually got experience points for avoiding combat and just getting around the monsters. You could still gain experience. You got experience for the gold you found, which was worth far more than the experience points for killing something.
Yeah.
But you still
Yeah,
had
that's right.
to find a way through that encounter, instead of being your way through it, because sometimes it just wasn't going to happen. And the risk and reward was still there, and that level of danger of like, oh shit. That's why dragons had it. Is the dragon a sleep roll? You know.
Right. Actually, if I can just touch a topic that you guys did recently,
Shoot.
Mm.
I think there's just the slightest delay on Zencaster, and so kind of talking over each other. So I apologize for that. But I think it was your very last episode. You guys were talking about. I think you guys were talking about like character progression and experience points and stuff like that. I think it was the last episode of your show, and something that I really like, something that I've adopted is I've taken away all like experience points from combat, gone. Experience point from treasure, gone. Now I just do like time in the game. Like, do you show up? Experience. That's it. That's it. All you have to do is be present and have your character in some kind of danger at all, which is, you know, all the time anyway. But yeah, and it's been extremely liberating, and it's not because I'm trying to get away from combat and violence and stuff like that, but it definitely, like, for people that have like a murder hobo problem, like, of course we're going to get into every combat we can. That's the only way we can get experience points. This is a fantastic solution that I've come across. And actually, so I started it in my podcast. I didn't realize other people were doing it too. I realized after the fact that actually it's pretty popular. And now I do it in the table group that I'm DMing, and it works, I think, really well. And plus, as you guys had said in that episode, who the fuck wants to do all that math? I mean, that's like, it's like, oh, and now I've got a part-time accounting job just to add up all this experience.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, fuck that. Yeah.
yeah. No, 100%. No, like, and yeah, I think even like getting rid of that math just makes it so, like, most games so much more smooth. Like, you don't have to care about
Yeah.
tracking your
Yeah.
experience
I
points.
think
Like,
a lot of people have been throwing that out for a while.
yeah, like my favorite was actually, it's how off topic to the actually previous episode, but my favorite is actually probably the PBTA style, where it's like you actually get better by failing instead of
Yeah.
actually just succeeding.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's 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 a powerful idea. I don't know if it maps onto D&D well. Maybe it does.
So, I mean, if you can't tally it like you would normally, well, I guess you could if you took like the DC of the check and multiplied it by 10, maybe. And instead, if you fail, you could
Yeah.
add a number of experience points, for failing. Like, because I do it in my
Yeah.
games too. If you die, you get experience points. But I stole that from Rollmaster. So,
Uh-huh. Right, right, right.
well, and
Yeah, I
in
remember
the
you mentioning
game,
that.
yeah, and how I always built my characters while I was playing. I'm still kind of a novice GM. I'm running my first real campaign now. But even playing, I always looked at, like, when we're playing Savage Worlds, the Eberron one, I actually didn't go off of what I thought I would wanted, but off of what he was inadvertently doing with like to pretty much kind of solidify the character, because I ended up having to like drag around a giant metal human or robot. I had to do
Right,
this, I had to do
right.
that, and I was doing a lot more physical labor than my character thought he normally would. So it's like it makes sense for his level to increase, and he actually become a little bit stronger because
Hmm. Hmm.
he's literally had to run around and just carry shit for 90% of this game.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
So, so Santa, here's
Shoot.
something for you. Now you know you don't need to say it completely, but I told you in Finder what we were really doing in the Eberron game, right? What adventure idea it was, right? I don't know if you remember or not, but was that Eberron game Grimdark or high fantasy? How would you categorize that game?
Um, I would have gone towards high fantasy, and the only I think it did take a grim. It didn't. No, 'cause I think the
Yeah,
first one
yeah.
was a lot more high fantasy, but
Hmm.
then I think it took more of a grim aspect after you were describing the guts and organs cut out from our one of our dear friends who was just murdered
Yeah.
horribly.
Yeah. Yeah, I baited them in for like I don't know how many sessions, maybe 10? I don't even know, 5 of like they're going to go on this pulp adventure and they're getting airships and they're exploring Eberron. They got to rescue this person who they went on an adventure with. Now they're looking for this mentor and she's been kidnapped. They go in and rescue her and then fast forward they advance and it's like, hey, by the way, here's a note, your mentor wants to meet you in this seedy shithole, in the cogs. And then bam, they stumble upon the murder of their mentor and that's
Right.
where it starts. Yeah. And then it got, yeah. So that's
And
why I asked. Yeah.
but even I think it was changed more to high fantasy by the players themselves, and it's kind of
Hmm.
because we were kind of playing it more high fantasy. Like if you think about the actions that we actually did, was we killed hundreds of people
Yep.
in by crashing an airship filled with passengers into a ship filled with pirates, causing things to blow up, and tons of people died. We accidentally infected a corpse with some sort of monstrous being. We infected an entire tribe of people
This is
with
some
a
sick shit. You
disease,
guys ought
which
to be ashamed of yourselves.
I this is like session like 2 or 3. I haven't even got it. Like we infected a tribe, which we said we would help, and then when because we had to do something, I forget what it was, and one of the guys actually became their de facto god. We went to save our friend and unleashed an endless spell that would burn and set everything to waste. And because we weren't strong enough, we ended up just dipping out after we rescued her, pretty much leaving that tribe and that whole entire region to be an utter catastrophe until someone actually who knows what they're doing comes. We destroyed a person's livelihood at a library. I pretty much drove an accountant to hating his job. Um, yeah, we were horrible people. Thinking back on it, and I was literally looking up at the ceiling the whole time, just trying to think of all the horrible things that we did. Yeah, we were playing Grimdark without even realizing. Holy shit! I've never it didn't even click till now. Yeah, we were playing Grimdark. We were fucking sociopaths. We did it with a laugh and a smile the entire time.
And I did it with the most high fantasy fucking setting ever.
Oh my
Fucking
god!
Eberron. So it can be done.
Which kind of goes back to the previous argument of you have to have the right players to make Grimdark feel grimdark. We totally did not do that. Oh my god! How did I not
So what have
notice
we
it?
learned here? We've learned that Santa wants to be a bad person deep down inside.
Oh, that's not even a question. I play with Finder on the weekend, and I had no qualms with hiring homeless people to get their ass kicked so that we could steal something. Yeah, I already knew I was a horrible person deep down inside. Don't worry. It's what my character would do, guys.
Oh
It's
my
what my
god, I
character.
hate you so much.
That's what my character would do.
Oh yeah.
Bravo.
Yep. It's the best answer I can give. It's not a good one. So yeah, Grimdark. I think even talking about it's so easy to get sidetracked because it covers so much, so many different genres, so many different settings, and it's it is just a hard topic to really kind of nail down.
But nothing makes me want to game more than Grimdark. Movies, books.
100. Yep.
John,
hundred
what
percent.
about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm just not happy in a game where I don't feel like my character is threatened. It doesn't have to have all of the moodiness and scariness.
No.
That doesn't have to be there. but I have to feel like my character's in danger, a lot of danger. Otherwise, it's not fun. I don't know. Like I don't know if they still make God mode on video games, but they used to do that on video games. Like you get a first
Yeah.
person shooter. If you put it on God mode, then you couldn't be hurt and you just blast everything. I don't know about you guys, but I never
Yeah. Yeah.
played God mode. Like I didn't see the
No.
point. It was almost like a way to turn a game into work. Like mowing down a bunch of
Mhm.
bad guys with a machine gun in God mode. It's like I might as well be doing the dishes. I'm just kind of getting it done. And
Yeah.
so like no fun, no danger, no fun. And so that definitely extends into RPGs for me. Like there's got to
Oh,
be danger.
100%.
I don't. So I'm with this new 5e group, and something happened where a character actually went below 0 hit points, and I thought, oh, well, there we go. Everything I've heard about 5e is that this doesn't happen, and here it is happening. I'm glad that this is happening. It wasn't my character. I didn't feel, I wasn't like, oh, haha, your character's dead. Fuck you. But the, the what happened was interesting. The DM said, you know what? Since we've only been going for a few sessions, and because it took you a while to roll up that character, I'm just going to say that you're close enough for the other characters to pull you to safety and stabilize you. And I gotta say, like something in me kind of turned off at that point, just because if that's the way it is, and the same
Yeah.
goes with like fudging die rolls. If that's the way it is,
Yeah.
and if I know it, like if you're gonna fudge die rolls, for the love of God, do not let anyone know it.
Yeah.
Like don't do it, but if you do, don't let anyone know it, because the moment people know that there's no stakes, you're not playing a game anymore. It's I'm not sure what it is. It's some kind of weird
It's a video
circle
game.
jerk of power. Yeah, it's a video game on God mode. It's to me,
Yeah.
it's utterly pointless. It's not immersive. There's like I feel nothing for a character that is invulnerable. Or if you ever played like when you're kids and you get your character up to like level 24 and for some reason you're proud of that and you're bragging about it, like that's something
Yeah.
kids do. Um, but then like that's not actually fun to play. It might be fun to
No.
fantasize about if you're a child, but it's not
Right.
fun to play because nothing happens.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like,
I've always said that the best stories that I've played are always when one of the players' characters actually die, or all of them. I remember more of the horrible
Definitely.
things that have happened
yeah.
than all the remember when we killed that dragon? Yeah, that was easy. Remember when we killed this? Yeah, that was easy. Remember when we overthrew the entire government due to one persuasion check? Yeah, that was easy. It's like I don't give a shit. It's not fun.
I don't watch Harry Potter and think, oh, fuck, I need to run a game right now. But when Conan comes on, or Red Sonja, or Dragon Slayer, or Beastmaster, I'm like, oh shit, I want to play. I need the basic encyclopedia. I'm going to get it out, make some characters for some people, and play that game. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, agreed. Like some of the coolest settings are always like the ones that you really want to play in always have stakes at hand. Like I don't know, I the 5e one, it's just yeah. Again, there's no stakes. There's no chance of you dying. I remember like I started off in playing GURPS, right? And GURPS, it
Uh
didn't
huh.
hold your hand, and I'm honestly surprised that we did not die, and it was only through freak luck rolls that we actually survived at all. Like, and that game was so much fun. And then that was when 5e was just starting to come out, and we're like, hey, why don't we switch over to 5e? And I remember being excited, like, oh yeah, that sounds super cool. And then we did, and I was honestly, I actually almost like I played in that group for a while, but I just realized I was having more fun interacting than I was actually playing the game, because it was like, well, I could just do this, I'll be fine. I do not care.
Mm.
Yep. Well, we're gonna play Curse of Strahd at 5e, humans only, and
I was
we're
going
gonna
to say,
change it.
Got to be
It's
danger.
gonna be
can't you
yeah.
convert it?
I mean, I have the conversions into all sorts of systems, but I mean, do you want to put our money where our mouth is?
Ooh.
We'll talk about it offline.
Uh,
Yes, do
yeah,
it.
I'd be down. I'd be down.
I can make 5e fucking dangerous and scary.
Talk about a niche. You guys would have the only Curse of Strahd AP, at least that I'm aware of, that doesn't have a goddamn turtle with a monocle in it.
I'm a halfling thief named Dildo
Or a
Baggins.
motherfucking copper penguin. Exactly.
So I can't play my turtle.
No.
Oh,
Oh, you could
Yeah.
just so I can fucking destroy your character in the first
And
fucking.
Also, that means I could try and be. I can
I
try and
can't
be
play my
dark. I
turtle.
could
I'm
try and
playing
be
my
evil.
Goliath.
Well,
Yeah.
if we get it done, we'll
So-
definitely record it for the audience. And John, if you want to try playing that,
Yes, John,
you're-
you're more than welcome.
it would be so much fun. We'll
More
use a different recording software that, although it's a little bit more temperamental, I notice it's a lot more consistent.
My Wi-Fi is
yeah.
pretty shit here. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I tried
Actually-
a bunch of online games, and I do play a few online games, but it's sometimes there's problems, and man, I hate being like the guy with the bad internet. It's a drag for everybody, right?
It's all good. I've been yeah, and it happens to everyone, I think. But
Yeah.
no, you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
It would be a hell
Absolutely.
of a fun game.
I have an idea of how to start it. Oh shit, this is genius. We'll talk about it offline.
Definitely,
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Let's talk about that offline.
So John, if anyone's curious about your content or wants to look you up, how can they find you?
Okay, well, I'm Tale of the Manticore, and if you look for Tales of the Manticore, by the way, you are going to find something by Pixar from the movie Onward, so that's not me. It's about as far away from me as you're going to get. It'll be pretty obvious. So I'm Tale, singular, of the Manticore, and you can just find me wherever you get podcasts. And my elevator pitch is if you'd like a non-comedy dark fantasy that takes itself seriously more in the Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings spirit, then give it a try. And it's got a couple other I guess points of interest. One, it's a solo play, and the other one is that it's an actual play that's being sort of re-dramatized as a radio drama. So it's presented in third person instead of the usual like first person. Like instead of like I go into the room, I'll say like Shawnee walked into the room and looked around, and then I'll explain what she saw. And it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it actually works pretty well. And give it a shot, especially if you are maybe a little bit sick of the zany comedy with its shenanigans and hijinks. Give it a shot, and you'll know whether it's right for you really, really quickly, I think. Oh, and I just started season 2. So you know what? Start with season 2 because really the production values are like, it's better, it's slicker, it's me having learned the craft better. And then, if you dig it, you can check out season 1 by all means. And you can see all the growing pains as well if you check out season 1.
Yeah, I'm currently listening to season 1. I think I'm on episode 6 or 7. I'll have to take a look. And as a person who doesn't actually really enjoy actual plays, I'm enjoying this because it actually tells a good story. And again, like it's fantastic. If you guys don't like actual plays, I still recommend checking it out because it is a pretty damn good podcast.
It's
Still come back to us.
Yeah, it's TALE, not tail as in the body part, but tail as in a story. Just so everyone's checking.
That's right. We've come full circle, and I've done a pun. Oh man.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's good.
I've done. Forgive me, I have sinned, and I've done a pun.
Fighter wanted us to do a horrible question, just because he likes to ask horrible questions, but I don't think I want to. I got nothing either.
Yeah.
No,
that's his thing.
Yeah, I know. He's a sick individual. So, Finder, if you listen to this, you're a sick individual. And get some help, buddy. Get some help. And on that note, RP people, I think that's all the time we have today. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know at rpsmartpeople@gmail.com. And if you hated this episode, let us know at rpsmartpeople on Twitter. I hope you enjoyed us, and I'd like to thank John again for joining us. Hopefully he'll come back another day because this was a lot of fun. Talk to you guys again and see you next time.
Fuck Harry Potter.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for a D&D podcast with a dark side? Something more like Game of Thrones and less like Monty Python? Tale of the Manticore is part dark fantasy audio drama, part solo D&D RPG. There's no plot armor here. The dice make all the important decisions. Join me as I resurrect the excitement, wonder, and emotion of old-school D&D. Made for a mature audience, Tale of the Manticore is both a fiction and a game. It's the story where chaos rolls.